Hey, how about this? We have lights. Let me go back in the shop and I'll tell you all about it. Welcome to 3D Accuracy, where I'll talk about 3D printing, 3D product design, and 3D injection and die-cast mold design. What I want to accomplish for today is to build on the success that I had yesterday, getting some of the electrical issues in the shop addressed, get them fixed and taken care of. So let me show you what happened on the last video, quick recap in case you didn't see it, and then I'll show you what I'm going to attempt to get accomplished today. I managed to figure out what the problem was with this GFCI outlet. It was wired incorrectly and kept tripping the circuit breaker. Although it wasn't this that was causing that problem, we had a short in one of the outlets in the other room. So I managed to luckily track that down quite by mistake and accidental like, not by any means because of skill on my part, but regardless, I got it fixed. So all the outlets in the shop now work correctly and the light outside works correctly. So the issue that I'm having is the lights that are out front in the shop between the roll-up doors outside, the lights outside don't work. Now, they appear to be on a completely different circuit than this on the inside, and I believe it has something to do with this ground fault outlet here. That's right outside the shop door. And this outlet is completely dead. It doesn't work, the test doesn't work, the reset doesn't work. I plug the device in to see if it's wired correctly, completely dead. I put the voltmeter in there, you know, the two probes, no electric. So, now the perplexing thing is, and let me show you the circuit breaker box, and I'll show you what I'm dealing with. It's just around the corner here. And here we go. So, what I'm dealing with in the circuit breaker box is this circuit breaker right here was the one that was tripping in the shop. And so this one is good now. It's functioning the way it should be. Now, I've got this other circuit breaker down below, which is a 240 volt. This says GFCI in the garage, in the shop. I think this is mislabeled. It obviously should have been up here to this circuit breaker. That would make sense. Every circuit in the panel is taken. I have no extra circuits at all. Every circuit breaker is on. There isn't a one that's tripped, but I have no electricity at that GFCI at the back of the shop. So, this water pump, this 240 volt, this was disconnected in the box so I could reroute it to the 3D printer. I doubt that the lights at the front of the shop, along the front of the garage, or that GFCI on the back of the garage were connected to this, because this is 240 and it's only 110. My guess is, but I don't know for sure, this GFCI here on this little 15 amp breaker and what says lights underneath it is probably the circuit breakers that I'm dealing with that affect that GFCI at the back of the shop on the back wall there. So I'm guessing this is the one and these are the lights at the front of the shop. So what I'm going to do is I'm assuming that there's electricity coming to the back of this GFCI and that this thing is no longer good. So I'm assuming that there's electricity behind it. Maybe this is wired incorrectly, because the one in the shop was wired incorrectly, as we showed on the last video. It was not wired right. So this one may be the same situation. It may not be wired correctly. And I also discovered, reading the instructions on the new GFCI I bought, that it will not test or reset properly unless it's wired correctly. If it's not wired correctly, those functions won't work, which gives the impression of a dead GFCI. So I'm going to very carefully open this up and assume that it's hot behind there, and I'll check it with my voltmeter to be sure, and then I'll see what I'm dealing with. If it's wired incorrectly and I have electricity at the electrical wires behind the outlet, then I'll go flip that one breaker off and see if that shuts it down. And I'm hoping that's going to be the case. So let's I'm going to take it one step at a time. So I got to turn this video off because I can't hold the camera and disconnect that and see what's inside with one hand. So one step at a time. Let me open that up and then I'll let you see what I find. I have this GFCI outlet pulled out of the box there, and it is definitely hot. I took my voltmeter and I touched it, black lead to the black, red lead to the white, and I get 120 volts. So I do have electricity at this point, but the ground fault outlet is obviously no good. So I have a new one, so I'm going to replace that. Now, the way this is wired here is I don't know if you can see it, but there's two Romex cables coming in. One in the right corner up at the top and one in the left corner at the top going out, I'm guessing. And what happens is there's a jumper wire that goes to the ground fault. You see the wires are kind of twisted together there with the red connectors. There's one in the left in the bottom with all the white wires, one in the right on the bottom with all the black wires. So it appears that the lights in front, if that indeed is what's coming through this box, are not protected by the ground fault connector, because you see this yellow tape here is over the connections that go out to the load. So it appears the lights are not part of the circuit. At least that's the way I interpret it, unless the electric has to go through, yeah, maybe it has to go through the GFCI and then back out in order to supply electricity to the lights. I'm hoping that's the case, because then all I have to do is replace this and the lights should work properly. So let's go back to the circuit breaker box, and I'm going to turn off the electricity and then come back in here and double check it and make sure that it works. And we'll start there. We'll start with replacing this GFCI and see if the lights work. If I do, then I don't have to mess with any of that other wiring back there. The only thing that I did notice is, I don't know if you can see it, it's a little dark in there, but on one of the black wires there's a little bit of a rub mark where it appears it's worn the insulation off of it. I don't know if you can see it or not. There's a little bit of an exposed piece of copper. At least I think it is. It may just be a shiny spot from rubbing, but it looks like it might be exposed. So I may pull that out of there and either tape it or somehow fix it, cut it off shorter and stick it back in that connector to get rid of that situation. But one step at a time. First, I'm going to turn off the electric and then see if I can replace this GFCI and then see if the lights work. We'll start there. Well, I turned off that circuit breaker that said GFCI, and I still had electricity at the back of the outlet here. So that wasn't the right circuit breaker. I turned off all the circuit breakers that said lights, and I still had electricity coming to here. So then I turned off the circuit breaker that I turned off yesterday to get the electricity off in the shop, and then I had no electricity here. So it's on the same circuit as the ground fault outlet that's inside the shop. Now, I'm not certain if this would affect the lighting, but it appears that the electricity has to come through the wires, jump through the ground fault, and then continue on. Does that make sense? No. No, it wouldn't. This is just an outlet, a standalone outlet, I think, that they put the ground fault outlet on instead of a regular old outlet. But it's probably, if it's, well, I'm not sure how it's wired, if it's in line with the other ground fault outlet in the shop or not. So anyway, what I'm going to do is, now that I have the electricity off, I'm going to replace this ground fault outlet and put the new one in that I have, and see if I get lucky and the lights work. I'm not sure how it's wired, if that's gonna happen or not, but one step at a time. I'll see what I can figure out. So first I'm gonna get the new ground fault outlet in there and see what happens. I have the new outlet in there, and before I put it in, I took some sandpaper and I scratched off all the connections, the black wire, the white wire, the ground, because they were a little corroded. So I just gave them a touch, cleaned them up a little bit. And I also, on the load side, which this wasn't wired with anything to the load side, only to the line side. So the other one was, anyway, this old one, I took the yellow sticker off of here that covers the contacts for the load side, because it was only connected on the line side, and I put it on here, but it wasn't sticky enough to really want to stay, so I just took some black electrical tape and I covered over those open contacts. I don't want those exposed when there's nothing connected to them in the box, so I just put a little electric tape over it to cover up those contacts. So now I'm going to turn the circuit breaker back on, test and reset this GFCI outlet and see that it works properly, and make sure everything in the shop still works properly, and then I'll check the lights out front and see if they now work. And I'm crossing my fingers, I hope we get lucky and that's the case. So now let's go turn the power on. We'll run over there quick and see what happens. The sun is so hot today, it's like 97 degrees again, and it's just a cooker in the sun. In the shade it's not bad, but in the sun, there, you see, I had to turn off the same circuit breaker that we were working with yesterday. None of these were connected in that circuit. So let's turn this guy back on, see what happens. Okay, that's a good sign. The circuit breaker didn't kick off. So let's go see if everything in the shop is working correctly still. And then I'll test and reset this outlet that I just put in here. Let's see if this is working correctly. Yeah, the light came back on. So, because that light is connected to this outlet and it turns off, and you can see the green light in the lower right hand corner of the outlet is on, so it's functioning properly. And if we flip this switch over here, the light outside should turn on, and it does. So everything is working good inside. Now let's see here. We have a little light down in the bottom right hand corner. See, and that is off. Now what we need to do is press, I'm going to very carefully, because we got juice, I'm going to press the test button. Come on. Okay, and nothing happened, so let's press reset. And that reset it. And did the green light come on? It looks like it did. Yes, it did. You got to get it at just the right angle, and you can see the light is on. So that should mean that this outlet is now working. And let's check it out. We'll turn on the voltmeter here, turn it on the volts, get it over to AC volts, see? And then let's get this guy. Black goes in the short one, red goes in the long one. So that's in, and we have 120 volts, 119.6. So this outlet is now working, and now I got to go turn on some light switches and see if we get lucky and the lights outside work. Well, no luck. None of the 6 lights on the front work. Not one of them. They're all out. So I don't know if they're wired in to that same outlet or not. So none of these lights work. So apparently they're not wired into the same circuit. So now I've got to go back and go to the switches that control these lights, see if there's any electricity at the switches. If there is, then it's something downstream. I highly doubt all 6 bulbs are burned out at the same time, but you never know. So one step at a time. Maybe I should check the bulbs. Now that would be the simple thing to do, is check the bulbs first and then go from there. So maybe we'll try that. I'll get the ladder out here and we'll pull a bulb with it and put in a bulb I know works and see if that makes a difference. I've discovered that this outlet here in the back with the ground fault connector has absolutely nothing to do with the lights out in front. This one, I turned off the circuit breaker, and so it has absolutely no power, and I checked the switches to the lights out front, and the switches have power to them. They are, when I turn them on, the lights in front do not come on. So it has nothing to do with this, so I'm going to go ahead and close this guy up and then deal with the lights as a separate issue. So I don't know what's going on there. If somebody didn't wire it correctly, I can't believe that all 6 bulbs are burned out, but you never know. First, I'm going to check and make sure the light bulbs are good. For now, I'm going to close this guy up and then be done with this one. I have that outlet back in and turn the circuit breaker back on. You can see the 2 lights come on the one in the middle and the one on the right. So that tells me it's wired correctly. And the little green light is on. I don't know if you can tell. Oh, there it is. Okay, you can see it down in the bottom. Focus. Focus. Come on, focus. There you go. See, you can see the little green light. So it's yeah. There it is. It's on. You can see the little green lights on. So it's working correctly here. So now all I gotta do is let's take this out and put the cover on. The thing I don't like about this cover is it's got a couple of grooves on the top that go in this little groove in the back of the plate, and then it just kind of sits there. But when the wind blows hard, sometimes it'll flip up and this thing will actually fall out, and I'll find it down on the ground. I wish these kind of snapped shut. You know, I wish they would redesign those so they you know, they would close a little more securely, because it's not secure. I don't like that. They should have designed this differently. Being a product designer, I look at that and I go, what the heck is this? Somebody wasn't thinking too good when they designed this. They were just in a hurry and wanted to get it done, because you can see the gap in the back. There's, you know, this should snap shut so that you know, you have to pop it out in order to open it. But anyway, it is what it is until I replace it, if I can find something better. So this part is done. Now I'll see what I can figure out with those lights in the front. Well, we got it. Finally figured out and got the lights working out front. All it was a couple of burned out bulbs and a couple of messed up light sockets. And so anyway, I got to take a couple of them apart and fix them, because the the socket. You can't even get the bulbs in and out of it. It just spins up there, and you can feel the wires getting tight. So I got to take those down, take them apart, and fix it, put it back up. Light fixtures, you know where they were made. You know, that place way over someplace that, you know, what's quality? I have no idea. That's where they were made. So I may replace them at some point. I'd like to get something with motion sensors on there so I can leave the lights on all the time, but you know, put them on some sort of a timer so they go off at a certain time, and then they only activate if there's you know, motion out there, something like that. I got to look and see what's available, but I'll probably replace them. And the GFCI outlet on the back of the shop outside, that's fixed. Everything inside is fixed. The only thing that I want to do is this one over here. If you saw the other video, you remember I mentioned that the screw on the bottom wasn't threading into the junction box behind it. The threads were apparently stripped out of it or something, and so I couldn't get it to pull the outlet in. Temporarily, I just put it back together because I wanted to get this done and make sure that it was all working. But what I want to do is, these are the little screws that are in there, you know, to hold the socket back in the junction box, and they're not working, so there's no threads left. So I'm going to take this number 8 screw here, which is slightly longer, self-tapping, and I'll drive that in there to pull the outlet back into place. So I'm not going to do that now. I'll do that maybe tomorrow, just a quickie thing, pop that open and pull the screw out, drive the other screw in, and bingo, it's done. Put the cover plate back on, and it's all finished. So not a big deal. But anyway, now I got to put all this stuff away, and throw away some light bulbs. Some burned out light bulbs and a bad GFCI outlet. That goes in the garbage too. I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you're ever in need of 3D product design, 3D injection mold design, 3D die-cast mold design, or 3D printed prototypes or production parts, please feel free to contact me. You can find contact information in the video description. I look forward to hearing from you and to being of service to you. Thank you for watching. As always, I appreciate it. See you on 3D Accuracy's next video.